an argument to Rameh and the Chachamim regarding a get shichur. The Chachamim say when you take a writ of emancipation on behalf of a Canaanite slave, the shliach who was given, the agent who was given the get to deliver, he's able to take possession of the get on behalf of the Eved, and therefore the Eved, the slave, is emancipated immediately. Rameir says no, it's a detriment. So Rameir explained why, because if he's an Eved of a Kohen, and he's able to eat Truma, he prefers to remain the slave and have all this food available at a very cheap price, rather than being emancipated. So the Gemara says, Tenach Eved Kohen, Eved Yishar Michael Meimar. So the Eved that belongs to the Kohen, we understand. The Eved would prefer not to be emancipated. But for the Eved Yisrael, it's a question of being a slave or being a free man. I mean, why would it not prefer to be the free man? Right? Even according to Rameir. So why is it a chov? It's a schus. So in that the Gemara answers, Omer Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchok mafsido mishivcha Kananis. Because he's denying him the Canaanite woman. Because once he becomes a free man, he's not permitted to her. As a slave, he is permitted to her. So Moses Adrabah, to the contrary, now that he's emancipated her, bas chorin, he's permitted to a Jewess. Till now, he's not permitted to be with a Jewish woman. On that, the Gemara says, Avda b'hefkera nichalei. The Eved, the Canaanite slave, prefers to be uninhibited when it comes to this area of activity, of behavior. B'hefkera. Zilolei shchichalei, pritzalei. The Canaanite woman, at every level of deprivation, what he wants to behave, he has this woman available to him. Because since she's similar to he in background, the degree of refinement or sensitivity to this area, not to sink to a certain level, the Canaanite woman doesn't have that sensitivity. The Baschorin has that sensitivity. I'll give you an example. The Rambam says in Hilchos Deos that a person is able to live 24 hours a day, and every aspect of his life is a mitzvah. Every aspect of his life. Not only when you put on tefillin and you study. He says a person eats l'shem shamayim. You eat to maintain your health, to be able to serve God. You sleep for the sake of serving Hashem. You relax for the sake of serving Hashem. You procreate to have children who are tzaddikim, to serve God. And he says, not like these people who behave like animals, who indulge in their sexuality like animals, but rather to produce that progeny which ultimately will serve Hashem. Every action of that person's life is considered mitzvah. Even the most mundane act is considered mitzvah because it was with the objective to serve Hashem. Okay? The Shivcha Kananis. So a Jewish person at some level has relevance maybe to that, to be more refined. The Shivcha Kananis, Nichale Zilale Shchichale Pritzle, because it's Zila, anything he wants to do with her. The availability, the level of breach of modesty, she's there at every level for him. Which with a Jewish woman, he couldn't interact with her on that level.
We also say that forbidden waters are sweet.
That was a Havamina. No, it's a pasuk in Nishlei.
Right.
Yeah.
So
okay, I'd like to. What's his name? The Gemara tells over a story. At the end of Nedorim, this man was a known philanderer, an adulterer, and he was about to commit adultery with this woman. And he went with the specific and commit adultery, and there was a bowl of onions on the table. And he had seen a snake, a poisonous snake, eating of the onions. Anything the Gemara says a snake eats of, the snake always leaves some venom in the food. So if a person would eat that food after the snake eats of it, the person would die. So all of a sudden, the adulterer goes and hides behind the curtains because he realized the husband's coming in the house. The husband sits down at the table. He's about to eat the onions. He jumps out from behind the curtain. He says, "Don't eat it, it's poisonous." So the Gemara says she's permitted to her husband. Because in fact, he would have committed adultery with her. He wouldn't have. He would want the husband to die. So that's a confirmation. So Gemara says, "So what's the chiddush?" Of course, it's understood. I need Rava to tell me this. It's Rava's statement. It's understood. Gemara says, "No." Since Shlomo Melech says that forbidden waters are sweeter, You may think he wants to maintain the adventure of the relationship, so therefore he doesn't want him to die. Kamash Malon, no, that even the adulterer, this is a confirmation he did not commit adultery. That we don't say that. Even though we say forbidden waters are sweeter, still, it's a confirmation he did not commit adultery. That's why it's a chiddush. You may consider that. The answer is no. But John State, he's not going back. It's a prohibition. There, firstly, the man himself was an adulterer. He had a history. He was an adulterer. This slave, his past has nothing to do with his present. Now he's a Jew. You could say, something. He's not going to observe laws which didn't pertain to him. Because until now he was a slave. Now that he's a free man, he's going to go back and do what? No, he's not. I mean, he's going to live as an observant Jew. An observant Jew is not permitted to be with a Canaanite woman.
I would argue with him.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would say that as a slave, his actual goal, his desire is to have a real Jewish woman, but she's forbidden to him.
Who said that's his goal?
Well, because it's forbidden. That's the sweet waters.
No.
Right now, it's forbidden to him. He's not allowed.
But no Jewish woman would be with him.
But that's the point.
No, but the word says matir bas-chorim. It's more than physical desire. It's a question of status. Marrying right now, you're like a subhuman being.
Exactly.
Now you're going to be able to marry royalty, even though you were a slave. Being emancipated brings you to another level. So that's considered beneficial to him. He would want such a thing. He's being reclassified. It's like a person lives in India in the caste system. All of a sudden, his classifications changed to a higher level. You gave me a new lease on life. You're giving the slave a new lease on life. He's become a Jew. He's permitted to a regular Jewish woman.
So you've got that. You've got the upgrading, and you've also got the fact that it's forbidden to him.
So but the Gemara doesn't take that into account.
I see that.
Okay. Okay, so Tosa has a question. So we're saying because of this, therefore it's a chov for the slave. The slave would prefer, according to Rameir, to remain a slave rather than be emancipated. So he doesn't want the person to take the shtar shichro on his behalf. As we explained, the Chachomim, they don't fully disagree with the concept. Ultimately, this man's going to be emancipated. He's going to be freed, right? Because the master sent the get with a shlich lo halacha. It's being delivered. Is it immediate? Is he going to be immediately emancipated, or is it going to be until the get arrives to be put in his hand? But he's going to be emancipated eventually. As a result of that, for the few hours difference, does it really make a difference? Or it's a mindset. I prefer to have this woman available to me. The Chum say you deal with the reality. A man is not a fool. Ultimately, his predicament is going to be, he's going to be a free man. Because when the get is going to be delivered, he's going to be emancipated. So because in the interim period, whatever it takes till he's fully emancipated, the woman's available. Is that enough reason that it should be considered a chov? It's not enough. The Chum say that's not enough reason to be a chov. That's not considered detriment to him. Instead, that's like, penny wise, pound foolish. For the moment of availability, you don't want to be the ultimate, because it's going to happen anyway. Either way, it's going to happen. The mayor says no. That's the mindset of the slave. That's what he prefers. So since he sees it as a loss, he doesn't want anybody to represent him until he actually receives it.
Because he knows he's going to get the benefits. So this way he says, now I can still enjoy myself.
Talk about moments. Relatively, it's moments.
You can make this same comment about the truma. A person...
You're right, exactly.
Give up his freedom for a meal.
It's not a meal.
truma.
It's a question of supporting yourself. As a slave, it's survival. You could survive for a pittance. Once you become a free man, you can't survive. It's not simple.
Yeah, but a person would have freedom.
Freedom to do what? Freedom to what? To spin your wheels. You can't earn a living.
You can't one's own life.
Okay? If you know what it means not to, what do you think people used to join the army? Right? Every decision is made for you. From the moment you join till they put you in Arlington Cemetery. No problem. People prefer that. They have no responsibility. I mean, where the slave's coming from? Where is he? I mean, he grew up, he was born in slavery. Maybe he prefers to die in slavery. He doesn't see it as being so terrible that he's not a free man. As long as he's not, not abused. A Jewish master is not permitted to abuse a slave, even if it's Tanani. And it was known, in the South with slave owners, plantations, the Jewish masters that did not mistreat their slaves. It was known. The women were treated properly, and the men were treated properly. It was always the other slave masters. They did things which are unconscionable with the slaves. That's where you find many cases, blacks, that after they were freed, they lit Shabbos candles. They took on many customs, even though they weren't Jewish, because as slaves, not that they were made into Eved Kanani. As slaves, they were treated, as part of the family. They weren't mistreated. Okay.
This is not part of the discussion, but evidently.
This week you don't have to go to 92nd Street. Why? You can come to the class here.
What's 92nd Street? Why?
Okay, that was a joke. Okay.
And evidently, can he be considered a shliach to deliver a get?
Sure. Okay. Avda befkeri nichaleis. Those ask a question. What about a child? A child who hasn't yet engaged in sexual activity, and he's an Eved Kanani. Could you take possession on his behalf? Yeah? Vim tome Eved Kotten Yisrael. An Eved Kotten, a Kanani slave, belonged to a Jew. Lo nechole befkero. He has no interest in this area because he's a child still. This is because he did not taste the taste of Isur, of prohibition. Michael Meimar. And the Gemara says that clearly. So according to Rameir, it seems to be Rameir argues every case. But if the reason why every Yisrael it's called the Chov is because he has what he has available to him, but that's only the adult slave. The minor slave has no interest. The Shloma, the Moder, Rameir, Be'evet Kot Yisrael, says Rameir would agree. If the child is a minor, and you give the get shichru to the shlich to deliver, the one who takes possession can take possession on behalf of the child.
Wait a second, Rabbi. How does a child take possession? What's the concept?
Good. Now let's talk. Good question. The whole concept of Zechiyah, take possession, is because you become his agent. If it's a child, can't have an agent. Okay? Even more than Tosa says. Okay, now, there's a difference. The Gemara says, it's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says if you have a ger koton, a minor who's a non-Jew, and the court wants to convert him to be a Jew. So it says they could convert him. Why? Because it's a schus to be a Jew. Going from a non-Jew to a Jew, it's a schus. It's a merit to be that. So Tosa asks a question: Zechiyah, what is the mechanics of acting on someone else's behalf? Shlich was to be a shliach, because if he would know, he would appoint you to be his agent. Firstly, a minor cannot have an agent; only an adult can have an agent. Secondly, at this moment, he's not Jewish. We're talking about conversion. So if he's not Jewish, a non-Jew cannot have a shliach. So how does the court act on behalf of this child to convert him? He's not Jewish. That's Tosa's question. So Tosa's answers, on a Torah level, he's not Jewish. But the Chachomim were empowered by the Torah that despite the fact they could bring about something which normally cannot happen. They're empowered by the Torah that they could convert him to be, even though he's not a Jew, even though later he's going to live as a Jew and he's not a Jew, and he's going to marry a Jewish woman, it's not considered a prohibition because Bezdin ruled that he's a Jew, although he's not a Jew. Wait a second. No, it's not Hefker. Normally we say, if Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, we don't blow the shofar. So the verse says, why? Because normally, whenever the Chachamim intervene, it's always when you violate on a passive level. It's a non-performance. But to be proactive, to violate the Torah, it says the Chachamim are not empowered to do that. They're not empowered. Here they're acting in the context that the man is going to be in violation of what? Proactively, of the Torah. He's not Jewish, and he's going to marry a Jewish woman. And the Chachamim are going to condone it and permit this. It's kumbasei. So Tosa says a number of places in Shas that when it says ein koach b'chachamim, they weren't empowered, means they don't usually use this power. But if they feel it's necessary, even where you're proactively violating the Torah, they have that power. So this would be one of those cases. Okay? That's how Tosas learns. So firstly, both the question doesn't apply here. There it's about a non-Jew being converted as a minor. Can't have a shliach. Firstly, he's a minor. Secondly, he's a what? He's not Jewish. We're talking about this is an Eved Kanani. Eved Kanani who's a minor belonging to a Jew. Okay, now, when is a non-Jew considered a minor? For a Jew is a minor until the age of 13. Puberty and age. What is a non-Jew? If a non-Jew is, let's say, 8 years old and recognizes the difference between right and wrong and violates one of the Shev Mitzvah Noach, is he liable for the death penalty? He's liable. It's not age, it's not puberty. It's recognizing the difference between right and wrong. Being in a position to make a choice, a rational choice. If he's at that level, then he's liable. Okay?
So is it determined by age, or is it determined by the judgment of that?
The judge, by a non-Jewish judge. Now, Eved Kanani. Eved Kanani, it's not based on what? No. Eved Kanani, he's a minor. Could he have a shliach? That's the question. Could he have a shliach?
In a regular?
Because he's like a woman. He's like a woman.
A regular Evikanani, not a minor.
What?
A regular Evikanani, not a minor.
So I'm not sure. Wait, I'm not sure. The halacha of, so when at the age of 12, I'm not sure how you would deal with him. In terms of his obligation, he has obligations. Right? His obligation is limited to a woman's obligations. What about age-wise? Does he have to be 12 years old? A woman's 12 years old, she becomes an adult. 12 years and puberty. So seemingly this Eved Kanani would have to be 12 years and puberty to what? To have obligation. No, son. What I'm saying is, so he may be an adult, but in terms of Tom Tam D'Yisura, not. So he's qualified to have a shliach. That's why it's not difficult here. He's Eved Koton in terms of Tom Tam D'Yisura. In terms of being involved sexually. He's not yet involved sexually. But in terms of adulthood, being qualified to have a shliach, he could have a shliach. So it's all gain and there's no loss. So that's Tosas' question. So according to the mayor, he should be in agreement in regard to taking possession on behalf of the minor slave.
How can he have a shliach if he's an Eved and everything that goes to the Eved goes to the master?
Has nothing to do with that. No, that's the Gemara asks. That's Gitav Yod Bo Kerchot. Right? How does a woman take possession of a get? The hand of the woman is like the hand of a husband. So the answer to the Torah says a woman can't be divorced. In regard to that, she has a capacity, and her capacity has nothing to do with the husband. If the Torah says you can emancipate a slave, that means he has a capacity where the master doesn't own that capacity.
What's the difference between an adult, a slave, and a child slave?
No difference.
No difference.
But what the
Right.
difference is, what's his interest? The adult slave is interested in the sexual activity because he's been involved. What about a minor slave? He hasn't been involved yet.
Okay.
So if he only sees the upside, there's no downside.
He doesn't feel like he's giving something up.
He's not giving it. He's not giving that, and that's what Tosa says. Rameir would, and Tosa says Rameir would be in agreement. There would be no argument here
So how does the agency work for the minor?
because he's an adult.
He's not an adult.
He is. At the age of 12, he becomes an adult, like a woman
We're talking
becomes an
about a
adult.
minor.
Yeah, Eved Cotton. That's what I'm saying. We're not talking about an Eved Cotton who's 5 years old.
What are we talking about? We're talking about the in-between.
What I'm saying is a dochik. We're talking about between the age of 12 and 13.
Oh, okay. So, but if it's less than 12?
I'm not sure. Then you'd have the same question as you'd have over there. Right? You'd have the same question as you have about the minor Gentile being converted by the Besdin.
But Rabbi, let's just say a Jewish child, a full Jewish child, less than 12. So
Less than
with-
13.
Well, boy or girl, less than 12, let's say. If someone wants to give a gift to this child through an agent, how does this work?
Doesn't work. Cannot.
There's no concept that the father is in somehow empowering the agent, or is it on behalf of the agent?
No. Cannot have an agent. To
So
take
there's no-
possession.
to take possession.
On behalf of the child, no. Not possible. I mean, they could give the gift to the child.
So then what happens?
We have an argument. That's the Gemara Sukkah we had. You should not give a lulav on the first day of Sukkot to a minor Because once the minor acquires it, the minor can't transfer it back. So there's an argument in Rashi and Tosas. Tosas holds the child acquires it on a Torah level. Because that's called das acheres makne. Since the one who's transferring has intent to give it, what's lacking on the child's behalf is an intent. The intent of the gifter compensates what's lacking for the receiver. That's Tosas. So therefore, the child acquires on the Torah level. Rashi says it's all rabbinical. Since rabbinically we recognize that as the child's, therefore rabbinically he cannot transfer it back. Okay?
So we don't have an answer here for a slave child less than 12.
Unless you say it's similar to the ger koton, converting a minor Gentile. Rabbinically we say it, so maybe we'll differentiate between an Eved and a Gentile minor. Okay? Further. Person says, the Gemara is going to discuss this, what a person is on his deathbed. And he says, give this get to my wife. This writ of emancipation to my slave. He says, give the get to my wife, give this, right? Umes, and he dies. Lo yidin lachem isa. Let's see, he dies, and before they actually gave the get, the man wasn't alive any longer. Of course, the get can be given, and the shtar can be given, but for two reasons. The get cannot be given because they ain't get lachem isa. Of course, what are we speaking about over here? We're speaking about where there were no children, right? So it's a question, is she yavam or not? So if there's a yavam, if there's a surviving brother, since the get cannot be given after he passes away, so she falls to yibum. In regard to the shtar shichrur, if he would emancipate the slave before he died, so the slave is not part of the estate, to fall to the heirs. But since the slave did not receive it, did not receive the shtar shichrur, so he becomes an asset of the estate. But he didn't give it, wasn't given. No, the shlich did not give it. The shlich lo locha. Says, give the get.
If he already took the get, he didn't give it to the
Then according to the Chachomim, by shtar shichrur would be considered. According to the Chachom, by shtar shichrur would be considered that what? That he took possession on behalf of the slave. But by Isha, because it's a chov. The get is a chov. We don't differentiate. We don't differentiate. Correct. That's the reason. Well, it's more than that. There's a question why. The agency ends. You can only represent a living human being. Once the person dies, it's terminated. Also, that's the question that we discussed this in the beginning of Ksubis. Rashi says, why and get lachem miso ain't a mesa megarshim? Because a person who dies, he cannot divorce, right? So what do they say? The reason why she doesn't need a get any longer, right? She's a widow, right? So the way they explain Rashi is speaking about that she's a yavama. So there's a remnant of that relationship between the husband and wife which continues. So the question is, so therefore it hasn't fully been terminated. So why can't you? Why can't you give the get? Eina mesim legarshim. Because a person who dies, only a living husband could terminate that relationship. A person, once he dies, he cannot terminate it any longer. No, there it's different. What about he says to his wife, not through agency, he gives his wife a get, he says, take the get, and it should take effect in 30 days from now. And he passes away before 30 days. Right? So it's not a question of agency. So the giving of the get is immediate. The effect of the get is 30 days. He passes away before 30 days comes. And he's childless. So in that case, the get's not a get either. So that's because Eina Meis Megarshim. The only one who could affect and terminate a relationship is only if you're a living human being. Once a person dies, because the effect is in 30 days. He's no longer alive.
But he already made the decision. It's only contingent.
It's irrelevant. You have to be in a position to terminate. In 30 days, you're not here any longer. So in 30 days, the get is not a valid get.
So the get that was only used in garage devices.
But no, there was retroactive. It was retroactive.
To
It had to be retroactive. No. Before they left, they say, if I should not return, you're divorced from the moment you took the get. If that case would be retroactive, it's not a problem.
She sent the shliach to Kabbalah when he died, well, the get wasn't confirmed, but she was divorced.
She's not divorced. She's not divorced.
Why is it she?
Because she never received the shliach l'kabbalah. She never received the get.
Shliach is the yaleh of the Baal, of the husband. I mean, it's right. So
Who died when?
the,
The husband died before the get was given.
The shliach to get the get. The husband wrote the get. He puts the hands into the shliach of the wife. He died.
Wait. The get came to the head of the shliach of the wife?
Correct.
Of course she's divorced. No, we're speaking about he died before the get was given to her shliach. So that's ein get lachamisa, right? That there the agency is terminated. A dead man cannot have an agent.
Can a man give a get? A man is childless with his wife. He gives her a get, and he says this get is effective the moment before that man dies.
Definitely.
Is that good?
Yes, valid.
Although we don't know exactly when.
Doesn't make a difference. Whatever that moment will be, a moment before he dies, the get should take effect.
So King David's soldiers could have the same concept.
Could have done 100%.
As opposed to the return, the get is effective the moment before the soldier dies.
But you don't know if he died. Maybe he's alive. There, it's not. They didn't say if I die. If I don't return from the front by a certain day, otherwise you have people missing in action. Maybe he's alive. Maybe he's not alive. If he died, then it's definitely not a problem.
A date was given.
A date, sure.
A date
Most people return, and this man doesn't return. Right? Whatever that date was. Retroactively.
Date certain.
Right, correct.
And if he returns later, his wife is remarried, that's okay?
If they specify the date, correct? Okay?
It's just like remarry this
Well, the Gemara is going to say, if according to the mayor was speaking about where the get wasn't written yet, or the get wasn't written yet, or was written, it wasn't yet given to the shliach to deliver. See, even according to Talmud, they would agree it's nothing, right?
Right, but some say
You could only be a shliach to take on behalf by the woman, definitely not.
Right.
Everybody agrees the woman is not divorced because it's a chov, it's a detriment. But even by the slave, if actually the order was given to write it, the sofer writes it wasn't yet given to the shliach who's designated to deliver it. So also he becomes part of the estate and the inheritance. So of course.
But rather, this mission is now dealing with two cases: the divorce and the emancipation. So isn't there a broader principle that says any agency is ineffective after the one who commissions dies, if the agency hasn't been completed? Why do we have to get into two? Why don't we have a broad?
No. According to the Chachamim, if the writ of emancipation was given to the shliach, he should be emancipated immediately. Right? We're not differentiating between shtashichr and gerisha. Right? Neither received the get afterwards.
Oh, I mean, the way the art scroll is saying, give this to my slave.
So you have to learn it. It actually was never given to the shliach. The shliach hasn't yet taken the get. Rashi says, it was never even given. It wasn't given to the agent when the master was alive. Right? That's what Chacham don't argue with Meir. Lomar that from the moment he took possession of the get, because the get was never given to the agent.
The mission is not telling you anything. It's just saying
it's telling you
I've
that
intended
even though
at some point I'm going to
so
give
basically it's
something
telling
to
you
the
that a person after he dies cannot have an agent. Although he gave the order, he cannot have somebody representing him once he dies.
But you
That's
mean,
the broader principle.
That's the principle.
well, the shlichus can't be created after.
No, see,
It
it's
says
interesting.
shliach doesn't even
There's a
exist.
famous argument. What exactly is an agent? Does the agent become the person, or the agent is an extension of the person? What's the there's a difference. The difference is this. Let's say if a person appoints an agent when he's fully competent and stable. He gives the get to the agent to deliver, then he becomes unstable, incompetent, a shota. Could the get be delivered? Could it be if the get is delivered, is it a valid get? According to Rambam, it's a valid get. It's valid. According to the Torah, it's not valid. So the way they explain what's the argument, when a person assumes the position of the one who commissioned him, does he become that person? Or he becomes a tentacle of that person?
He signed the get. He
No,
authorized the get, so it's valid.
No, we're talking, what's agency? What exactly is agency? Is agency that the person who was commissioned to represent the husband, does he become the husband? He is the equivalent of the husband. Although the husband could terminate him any moment he wants. But until he's terminated, he's functioning fully as the husband.
At the time he gave it.
Not because he's the tentacle of the husband. The difference is in this case where the husband becomes incompetent. So therefore, now the husband becomes incompetent. It doesn't affect the effectiveness of the agent. Because the agent now functions independent of the husband. But if he's only a tentacle of the husband...
No matter what the husband is.
No. So then if he becomes incompetent, the tentacle doesn't function.
Right, exactly.
He becomes ineffective.
He is the husband, no matter what the husband is.
The husband...
If he's a tentacle of the husband...
So if the husband becomes non-functional, so then the get's not a get.
Exactly.
Right, but if you understand as the Rambam, he's not a tentacle. He is the husband. I mean, there are many applications of this. There's halacha by get, the paper, many things have to belong to the husband. Let's say the sofer is appointed to write the get, and the ink, the paper, the quill belongs to the shliach. Does he have to be makner? Does he have to transfer it to the husband, that it should be his possession? If you say the husband is literally, the sofer is the husband, the material he uses, he's the equivalent of that. Maybe. But there is such a discussion. Or in either case, he has to transfer it. So if he's only an extension of the husband, so he's not the husband. So therefore, it has to be he has to give it to a third party to take possession on behalf of the husband. But if he is the equivalent of the husband, his paper, his quill, his ink is sufficient. Of course, because he's functioning as the husband. So if you learn like the Rambam, Ein Get Lachamis is a little bit of a chidush. You'd say once he's commissioned, just as if he's incompetent, it doesn't affect his function, maybe even if he dies. As long as he established him to represent him when he was alive, so despite the fact he died, maybe he still could function in his capacity. The chidush is Ein Get Lachamisa. That's only as long as he's alive, it's a question of functionality, he could be in his place. But if the man dies, an agent still is a representative of someone else. Who are you representing? You can't represent the person no longer alive. So that's a chidush. Ein Get Lachamis would be a chidush according to Rambam. According to the Torah, where you're only a tentacle, what's the chidush? Ein Get Lachamis is understood, right? You can't. It's understood you can't represent somebody after he's no longer here, because you're only an extension of him. If there's no him, there's no extension.
The Torah hold that even if someone who's deathly ill and do something to somebody?
So as long as the person's alive, he's alive. He's alive. Right? We're talking about somebody who's a shote. Legally, he cannot function in this capacity.
So the Rambam would say that a man gave a get to an agent. A man was in a car accident and was brain dead.
Question: what brain dead is?
Okay?
Is brain dead alive?
He's breathing. I mean,
Okay,
the
we
heart
hold
is
la
beating.
halacha. Okay, he's alive. He's alive.
That get works.
That get would work if the agent would give the get, according to Rambam. According to Torah, the get would not work, would not be valid.
Something we spoke about a while ago was someone who sets up a will that things are given away just before the person passes.
Well, that's easy.
That works for it?
Of course, according to everybody.
Because it's not going to be given.
Well, it'll be transferred a moment before he becomes incompetent. It's the way you write it. Before he becomes incompetent.
You know, it's not to really happen until.
Why? No, factually, you have to have the death certificate to collect. But legally, the transfer took place when at the last moment that he was competent.
And what is the definition of incompetent?
Whatever it is. He's not in the coma. He's not comatose.
What about Alzheimer?
Same thing. Would be the same problem.
Is he
If it's extreme Alzheimer, that's Shota. That's an incompetent person. If it's extreme Alzheimer, yes.
There's a case like this that's going on in the newspapers right now with Sumner Redstone. He owns a major conglomerate.
Right.
He has 94, and people are saying he's incompetent.
So a lot of people.
And there's an argument. Well, if he is competent, he controls. He has a say.
He's probably competent. He's competent. The halacha is that if you ask a person a number of questions, and he answers yes when he's supposed to answer yes, and no when you alternate the questions, and he answers the way he should answer, he's considered competent.
We don't know that. We don't know how he would answer that. No.
But if there's a dispute, there's a way to determine this.
No, I'm just saying.
I understand.
They're fighting now about whether he can be tested.
The ones who want the money say he can, you know.
Is there a way to hire someone to do something after your death?
No.
Not contractually, not financially?
No. Everything transfers away. Person dies, their heirs, whoever the heir may be, transfers immediately out of the person's estate.
You can't have an irrevocable contract?
Unless it took effect initially, before.
Contract took effect before he died.
Right.
And it was irrevocable, doesn't matter what happened when he died.
No, you can have the condition can be a later condition. Something may happen later, but it affects what took place before he dies.
A living will. So this person becomes, disabled, unable to make a decision, appoints the wife to make the important decisions. So the Tur would say, what? It doesn't work.
No, there is not a regular. It's not an agency issue there so much. Right? It's a legality over there.
So what is it? What does that mean?
It's not an agent.
Saying make the decision.
Right? He's authorizing to make the decision. Okay? It's not a problem.
Not a problem.
No. Okay, stop here.